Now, there's a few things about our organization, Quint, Wellington, Redwood. We're a completely independent management consulting firm that's been in business for almost 25 years now. We'll be celebrating that next year. Started off in Amsterdam, but now we've expanded to be a completely global company. We have over 250 consultants operating in 49 countries on just about every single continent. Our core business practices include sourcing, architecture, governance, lean IT, service management, and DevOps, of course. We're very proud to say that we are a top global advisor on sourcing and governance by the IAOP. We are rated the highest. The highest ratings possible in client satisfaction, delivery of excellence, and innovative programs by that organization. And last off, we continue to be a trendsetter in the areas of ITSM, lean IT, and DevOps. So as I mentioned before, today is the first webinar of our series, The Impact of DevOps and Operations. This Friday will be the next webinar of this series, Service Management in a DevOps Environment. And on next Tuesday and Thursday, respectively, will be the final two sessions of our webinar, DevOps is More Than Buying a Tool, and the Business Case for DevOps. So make sure to sign up for those if you are interested in those topics as well. Now I'd like to introduce our series speakers today, Niels Loder, Alex Van Kampen, and Frederick Schucken. Niels and Alex are featured with us today. Frederick will be involved with the other webinars of this series as well, so we'll be first introduced to him on Friday. But without any further ado, I'd like to hand things over to Alex Van Kampen, who will get us started.
Thank you, Alex Mazurek. Thank you for that introduction. So, as Alex said, of course, we're going to be talking about DevOps today, which is one of my personal favorite topics. Now, the way we're going to do that is Niels and I will have a little back and forth. We're going to talk about a couple of different topics, and I just want to quickly run over what they are today. So first, we're going to talk about what the classic journey is moving towards Agile and then from Agile to DevOps. Then we want to, of course, and that's what the series titled, we want to talk about what happens to operations, and we want to share like 5 different perspectives of what happens and where we think you should pay attention. And then we're going to try and tie that all together. We're going to wrap it up and summarize some key takeaways, and then hopefully get to some questions if you might have them along the way. But before we start talking about this classic journey, and maybe Niels, you can help me here, maybe we should share at least our perspective on what we consider to be operations. So what would be your definition, Niels?
Yeah, that's always a good place to start, Alex. We see operations as those people who are responsible for the production environment. So we're tending to look at development environments, test environments, and then that production environment, and we tend to keep these two sets kind of separated from one another, and this leads to kind of 2 different cultures and 2 different perspectives on life, because the operations guys are really there worrying about whether the customers can actually use the system, and the development, the other environments are really concerned with developing new stuff. So that's really the definition that I'd like to use now, and this includes, by the way, both application operations people and infrastructure operations. Okay,
because yeah, that would have been my follow-up question, but if you put it like that, then I totally agree, and I think we would be ready to start discussing the first topic. So what would be the classic journey in your view?
Yeah, we had a conference last year with I think 200-300 participants, and we asked them all, okay, how do you start your journey to DevOps? And what we found was that 58% of these people actually start from an Agile development team. But we did also, obviously, the other 42% start from a different quadrant. Some started from their applications operations teams and built DevOps teams around those. Others started from infrastructure. But as I said, the majority start from their knowledge and experience with Agile, and then move on to including operations in those Agile teams and turn them into DevOps teams. The interesting thing is that there's no right way to start. Okay, there is a common way that people start, but it doesn't mean that if you're not doing Agile that you can't do DevOps. I mean, DevOps is based on lean principles. It's all about DevOps is the ultimate search for flow within IT. So starting with Agile is not always necessary.
Okay, but and I, of course, I know you very well, Neil. So I know that you also have a lean background, because to me, this is what what it really is about. At the end of the day, for any IT organization, you want to put value in the hands of your customer, right? And value is not only derived from relevant functionality, but also from just availability, right? So it kind of makes sense that you want to include that from a value stream perspective, right?
Exactly. The fact that the thing works is kind of important to customers, and if it works, the next thing they'll do is say, well, can you change this thing for me? Well, and that's where a bit of agile development can help you to speed up that. The other thing that customers always ask, if you're doing those first two things well, then they're going to start to ask you for advice, and what kind of process do you have in place, and what kind of skills and knowledge do you have in place to actually deal with that question that customers bring to you. So it's important to look at DevOps in a broader perspective than just saying, okay, well, let's deliver the product and just make sure it's in production and we'll see. Okay, it's about understanding the complete service around that product that you're delivering.
Yeah. So, but then it sounds like, okay, this is the stuff that we want to be chasing. So where do we start? Do we just pick up and take what we consider to be the ops people and combine them, put them together with the dev people, or maybe we should just talk about a little bit about the organization and the way you set it up.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because organization is obviously an important one, and it's one of the most visible ways that we create our DevOps teams. Obviously, I remember reading on our website a couple of years ago that when you create a DevOps organization, well, you've got to make sure that there are good communication channels between Dev and Ops. Well, the easiest way to create communication channels is to put the people in the same room together where possible. And get them working together in close proximity. That's the starting point. But it's not quite as simple as that. As I said earlier, you've got two teams of people coming from different backgrounds, they've been steered differently, they've been told to focus on different things, and now we're bringing them together and saying, well, actually, we forgot to tell you this a few years ago, but you do actually have a common goal, and that's providing value to your customer. So when you bring the two cultures together, you really do need to pay attention to building that team, and you've got to realize that maybe some of these people had some form of animosity towards each other previously because they were, one wanted the thing to be stable, and the other guys would deliver a new bit of functionality that wasn't quite tested properly, and now you're saying, okay, together you're going to work out this service from start to finish, and that takes a lot more guidance than you may expect. So it's important for leaders to realize this, and even before you bring the teams together, actually talk about team building with them, talk about what's going to happen, and make them realize what where they're moving towards.
Okay, and this is at least what comes to my mind is, would you think that anybody existing in a let's call it traditional ops environment would be able to go along with that difference in mindset or approach?
I've seen basically the whole spectrum. From people who literally left the organization because they just couldn't handle it, to ops people who have loved it. And I would hazard a guess that probably somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 really take to it very, very well, especially if they've been prepared in the right kind of way. So there's been a clear goal setting, and there's a clear understanding of how we're going to do this work together. So
Okay.
that's I think the important thing.
Yeah, because at least in my experience, what I would always aim for is eventually building these teams of high performing engineers or whatever you want to call them, site reliability engineers or whatever. And so you start out with the dev and the ops people, but you really start building those inclusive teams basically. So
Yeah,
and make people.
absolutely.
Yeah, so you can start building that shared responsibility for the performance of the app and or the whatever the service might be that a team delivers, right?
And in that process, you've got to make everybody realize that they're important. No, it's not like, okay, well, we got this really cool dev team that's doing all kinds of cool Scrum stuff, and we're fun, and we talk with a kind of vocabulary that you guys from Ops don't know about, and well, okay, we'll let you join in, and it's about both parties really feeling that they're important to making sure that the customer gets the value.
Yeah. So of course, a big part of getting value, and this is a little segue, is of course delivering at high performance. But let's talk a little bit about what we consider to be performance and what that is.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, these are fabulous statistics, and anybody seeing this would kind of look at it and go, "Hang on, this is what I want as well." And not just customers, but also it's really cool as an engineer to be involved in this kind of performance. You just feel on top of your game. So it's a very enticing proposition, but it is also quite a challenge to achieve it. So what's important about performance is that, as I said earlier, you move from the two different types of performance measures that you tend to see across dev and ops teams to a single customer-oriented style of performance measurement that really helps to galvanize the team in the right direction. And then we're talking about things like just focusing on end-to-end lead time. It doesn't matter how quick your sprint was, or how you're how you're creating a bit of code. It's about how quickly am I getting my my product improvements to my customers so that they can start earning money or saving money for themselves. And this basically means that the performance needs to cover all the aspects that are relevant to the team as a whole.
Okay, and so a discussion that at least that I get into oftentimes when I love these Puppet Lab statistics, by the way, but when I talk about end-to-end lead times or talk about these improvements and these numbers, the feedback that I get is, yeah, this might work very well for Spotify or Netflix or any of those unicorn IT companies, but I have a environment, or I have to make sure that my auditor sees my segregation of duties, and so this is all very cool, but it's not for my organization because we're different.
Yeah. yeah. Every organization is different. It's always different, and then somehow or other they still end up with similar kinds of problems. Yeah, I think these statistics are obviously, as I said, very enticing. But when you look at a team that you're bringing together, if you've measured stuff before you bring the teams together, you see a certain performance measure, and even improving that by 30, 40, 50% as a starter is really worthwhile. and you'll find that just literally bringing people together, working on team building, is throwing down the gauntlet of challenge to say, okay, guys, this is your thing. You know, there's a team of, what is it, 7, 8, 9 people. You are responsible for this, and tell us what you need to help you to perform better. And you'll find that 9 times out of 10, they're picking up the gauntlet and saying, okay, we can do this, and we can create a better performance and a better experience for our customers than we did when we were separated across the organization in technical silos.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And some of the most amazing stories on that, and even with really traditional or older type organizations, like maybe even cool names like Disney or Target. If you just listen to the stories that these guys share at different DevOps or whatever type events, you know, they're really amazing. But to me, a big starting point of that, and that's just my view, is of course the looking for, as you said again, the end-to-end lead time, and really improving that flow within these end-to-end processes. So, should we talk a little bit about flow and how we improve that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so flow is about the processes, and particularly your operations people, if they've come from an ITIL background, which I hope most of them have, they'll be bringing a bunch of knowledge that is really useful to the DevOps team on these processes. I think that's where it really, when you go into the team building, you need to reinforce the fact that it's not just dev bringing in some cool stuff in terms of Agile, but it's also the overview of all the aspects that you need to cover that the ITIL guys are basically bringing with them. And this combination of Agile and ITIL really forms a very, very good foundation for improving the flow of your processes. I mean, as I said earlier, there's the essence of DevOps. It's the ultimate search for flow within IT, and by this I mean we're looking to understand our process, this plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate process so well that we can bring it back to the really essential value-adding steps and automate those as much as possible so that we can carry it out as fast as possible. And this is really what DevOps is all about. And we're not just using tooling to achieve that, but we're using everything in our power, everything that we have in terms of organizing, in terms of understanding processes, in terms of understanding performance, and the behavior and attitude that's around that, to really make sure that we're achieving this flow. You know, if you just looking a little bit at performance in this flow, one of the key performance indicators that you want to measure within a DevOps team is how many releases can you do in a single period of time, and the more the better. So it's about the capability. The fact that you don't necessarily do that is not the point. The point is, do you have the capability to release at any moment in time? And this will allow you to deliver the value to your customers very, very quickly. Because currently, our processes are in fact one of the impediments to getting flow to our or getting the value to the customers quickly.
Yeah, and I think that, especially what you said, you know, if you want to, the more you release, the better, and that completely aligns also with, and anybody listening out there, read the book Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble, right, where they describe it, and if you listen to him speaking somewhere, talks about, we used to consider or think that changing your environments was going to impact stability in a negative way, but we learned that it's actually the other way around, of course. So anybody out there listening that does quarterly releases or 6-month releases because they feel that their application landscape is going to be under pressure, please stop doing that. Start building flow into your existing processes.
Absolutely.
But Niels, when you say, you know, I hope that there are people out there that come from an ITIL background. Now, when I talk to organizations wherever, and especially if they're a little more siloed, if they're a little more traditional, in a lot of people's minds, ITIL does not rhyme with flow, and not only does it not rhyme in a phonetic sense, but also the way it's perceived in the organization.
Yeah, I think the where ITIL is kind of moving to is that rather than saying, okay, well, we've got 26 processes that you need to have implemented in your organization, they're turning much more into areas of attention that you need to be aware of and that you need to do something about, because a DevOps team, mark my words, you better make an availability capacity plan, you better make a service continuity plan, you'd better do service design properly, you'd better do this stuff properly, otherwise your service is doomed. The only thing that's really different is that the key process is the one that we're showing on the slide here. And that's the one that we've got to get worked out properly. And all those having an extensive description of an incident management process is fairly pointless, because the incident comes into the team. You should have a mechanism to just say, okay, who's going to pick this up and who's going to solve it, and you should have the skills and knowledge in the team with enough people for anybody or almost anybody to just pick this thing up and say, okay, I'll solve it this time.
Yeah, and that I guess ties back to what we talked about before about the end-to-end ownership and understanding that actual value stream, I suppose. Okay, so one of the things, and I think that's going to be, looking at the time, the next thing that we talk about, one of the things that at least I get asked a lot is, okay, I want to start DevOps and I now know where to start. Well, what tool do I buy?
Yeah, well, good luck. This is obviously one of our partners, Xavier, who's produced this periodic table, which is a fabulous document. And by the way, it gets updated, I think, every month or every 2 months, something like that, because there are so many new tools coming out. And I think when it comes to tooling and operations, there are a couple of things that we need to be aware of. One is that operations people will need to learn how to work with code, and obviously they do scripting now, but this process of particularly things like infrastructure as code, and being able to automate IT pipelines, these kind of stuff. This is where operations people will need to help as well. So this is a skill that they're going to need to develop, and particularly the operations people need to improve their skills in the area of monitoring. And monitoring tools are supremely valuable for a DevOps team. And this is where with operations experience, you can create the monitoring tools in a really cool way.
Okay, and something I just want to add to that, and at least in my experience, of course, there's so many different tools out there, but what I found is it is always going to be sort of an individual path per team, right? And also depending on the technology that you work with, and some teams would really want to start focusing on automating their regression test, and trust me, automating your regression test, whatever type of technology, is very possible and very powerful. But also some teams might want to start with just improving their deployment processes. It really depends on where you want to start, but I would say focus, automate everything. But when we talk about DevOps, and especially when you look at all the material that's out there on SlideShare or whatever, you're going to see people talk about CAMs or maybe even CLAMs when they want to include Lean. But of course, the starting point with that is culture, right? Yep. So you want to share a little bit of your view on the culture or the behavior and mindset of the DevOps organization?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's this is an important one because this is an area we spent a lot of time on when we were working with the DevOps Agile Skills Association, trying to bring the mindset and behavior back to a compact set of things that you really need to focus on. As I said earlier, team building collaboration is absolutely vital. From day one, we've got to make sure that we're getting people working together, and not staying in their little operations camps or development camps. This requires leadership, and leadership not just from managers, but also from people within the team. Each person comes with their own set of skills and can show leadership in that area. And this means giving each other feedback and making sure that we're being open to one another. And this also requires courage. This is one thing we find is the DevOps teams need to have courageous people who are prepared to experiment, but based on a good risk assessment within the team, so everybody knows what's going to happen, and then we try something new. And that trying something new is obviously the heart of what we're trying to do with DevOps, is making sure that we're every day producing something better than we did before. And this is really the heart of continuous improvement and problem solving. So these four aspects together are the ones that we really want to see within a DevOps team.
Okay. But when you say when you talk about being courageous, and I know one of the things that you say, if you want to be a lean organization, right, you have to learn to love your problems, and if you want to do kaizens in an effective way. But so I get that it's in there. It is, but it's not typically the kind of behavior you would see from a leadership or maybe even lower level like team management perspective. So.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about and really build that, not only in the minds and the culture of the workforce, but really in sort of like the leadership sense?
Yeah, by the way, the courage thing is an interesting one because that's where the ops people tend to be a little less forthcoming than with the dev people. Dev people will be there, you know, let's try something, that's cool. But the ops people will need to be helped to reach that same level of experimentation. Yes, you're right. The leadership is an issue in this area, especially if you're early in the DevOps curve in your organization and you have a lot of traditional governance mechanisms like project management or project portfolio management that still work in a kind of old way. They need to learn that this team is taking calculated risks that they know about and that they have the tools to recover from those experiments if they go wrong, and they will at times.
Okay. So, okay, thank you for that one. And looking at the time, I think we're going to run over a little bit. I would like to sort of move to key takeaways. And if you'll allow me to summarize, Neil. So I think what we talked about is if we want to do this, and if you want to include or impact the operations teams and part of their business in a effective way, be inclusive. Respect the fact that the starting point, especially if you've been doing Agile for a while, might be a little different. So ensure that you be inclusive with the operations department. You instill the sense of ownership, maybe from a value stream perspective, but you work on that ownership in teams because we think ownership is very awesome and very powerful to deliver value. When you have an understanding of that ownership and that value stream, you really want to work on stimulating flow, no matter if you're one of those cool unicorn companies or one with a little more traditional background. And to do that, you can be supported by automation, and there's a lot of tooling out there. There's a lot of tooling for all these different parts, either being deployment, maybe some regression testing, maybe some building or integration stuff, or maybe even monitoring. So tooling is out there, is very cool, and is very supportive of this ambition. However, you do need to instill that behavior mindset into the culture of your organization. So was that an appropriate summary, or did I miss something, Mr. Niels?
You did great, Alex. You did great.
Yes. Thank you. I hope I delivered value with that one. So,
Okay.
seeing as the time, I think we might have time for some questions. So, other Alex, do we have some questions?
Yes, other Alex, thank you for the great presentation, Niels, as well. We have a few questions asked throughout the presentation, and just to remind everybody, if you still have them now, it's still open, so go ahead and ask them. The first one we have is, do I need to be on the cloud to do DevOps?
So, Niels, you mind if I take this one?
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
So, and the first answer is no. But hopefully someday you will be. So we get this question quite a lot. So to me, in order to deliver value to any organization, whether you are a infrastructure party that delivers platforms, or if you are a software team that creates and maintains a superior app or whatever type of digital experience, you want to have the resources that you need to deliver that value available at your fingertips. Now, that does not mean that you need to go and run to Amazon right away, but that does mean that if you need a platform, that platform should be relevant, and it should be it should it should be similar to what you have in your production environment. So, this is again something Jez Humble says: if you test something, the words "it worked in dev" or "it worked in test," they should be valuable. So that means you have to have a platform that is just a copy of what you're already doing. And also, if you request that environment, you don't want to wait for procurement to start a 3-month negotiation and then somebody with a cart wheeling in these new pieces of iron into your data center. So you want to have that capability. Now, to me, that means if you want to do that in a financially responsible way, in the long term, you need to move towards a cloud partner. You can build your own private cloud, but investing in your private cloud, I don't think that's very cost effective for a lot of organizations. It is, again, not something, to me, it is really what you want to work towards. That does not mean you have to have it as a starting point, but the more you're going to bring responsibility and ownership and resource availability to teams, it is something that you want to be chasing. So I hope that kind of answers the question, at least from my perspective. So any more questions, Mr. Alex?
Alex,
Yeah, the second question that we have here is, well, how does this all work if you start with operations?
Well, it works in pretty much the same way. I mean, you need to make sure that you're getting. You need to make sure that you're looking at the same aspects. But obviously, if you're starting with an ops team and inviting dev people to come and join, you need to be aware of how they're experiencing being brought into a team where the traditions are ITIL based, the performance measures are different, and there is a huge amount of maybe need for stability, where you don't want dev people to start getting frustrated because they're brought into an environment where they're not able to do their work properly. So again, you need to make sure that you're looking at these 5 aspects that we were talking about. To make sure that that the integration works properly, because that's really what DevOps is all about: is managing the integration of these of people into a coherent, high-performing team. One of the ways to do that, quite a nice way, is to bring everybody back to lean principles. If you teach them their lean IT principles, and you say, well, look, guys, this is what Agile was built on. This is what DevOps is built on. And in fact, if you look through ITIL's looking for the same thing: customer value, good value streams, flow, and making sure that we're delivering that value to customers. And really, I always get a little bit upset when people say, well, you've got to do Agile to do DevOps. I would say the real key necessity for DevOps is understanding lean principles. Lean IT is the basis.
Great answer, Niels. The next question we have here, this is a really good one. It is, My company has a, traditional approach to implementing things like methodologies, applications, etc. Is there any specific way to measure the maturity of my organization in its as-is state to create a map to grow into a to-be state? Speaking in terms of DevOps here.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should ask. I mean, the five dimensions that we've assessed in this case, operations, or the way operations can be integrated. The way we've looked at that is based on what we call our DevOps integration model, and it's our way of helping teams to become DevOps teams. So yes, I don't like really talking about maturity, but helping teams to integrate, because each team is mature enough to start integrating. That's the key thing, and as they integrate, as they get together better, they're able to perform better, and this is all part of what we look at. And obviously, each of these dimensions has a number of key aspects that we look at. Things like how independent can the team act? Do they have enough skills and knowledge? These kind of aspects. And this is one of the models. There are more out there, but obviously, we're talking now, so we can talk about our model. Okay.
Yeah.
And I knew you were going to talk about integration and as opposed to levels of maturity, Niels. But so you did. So do you have any more?
Yeah, we've had quite a few good ones in here. So I think we're going to do two more and then wrap things up today. This one is there a list of KPIs or OKRs that we can use to measure progress on our journey?
Well, yeah, we said one earlier, which was, how often do you release, or how many times can you release in a particular time period? And start with maybe a month, and maybe you're only releasing once a month. Well, if you can get that to twice a month, you're doing a good job, and take it from there. We've even had customers who started with once every 6 months we do a release. So that's always a very good one to bring the team together, but also just simple things like end-to-end lead time of each of the units of work that you're processing. Whether it's an incident, whether it's a change, whether it's a service request, I don't mind all these units of work that you're processing. Just monitor how quickly you're doing this, because this is what your customers are looking for. They want that value quickly. So keep it simple and keep it small. If you pick up an ITIL book, you can probably find somewhere upward of 500 different measures, but you don't need that many. It's literally the 3, 4, 5 that the team needs to show that they're doing a good job and to help them to improve.
All right. And as I'm just going to be the last question today, there's a lot of good ones in here, guys, and I just want to let you know that I'll forward your questions on to Niels and Alex here, so you'll all be answered and emailed on later if you did ask a question that we don't answer here. So the last question we have is, where does Lean IT fit in with DevOps? Is it either or?
No. As I said earlier, it's absolutely a foundational thing to being successful with DevOps. I've literally seen DevOps teams being brought together and being explained at a high level how DevOps works, and being told to get working, and okay, it works to a certain extent, and then we've come in and said, okay, well let's spend a day or two just talking about lean principles and what lean can deliver you, and then you see all the pennies drop at one time, and they're like, why didn't somebody tell us this earlier? So I'm telling you now, make sure that your teams understand lean principles and then build on that DevOps knowledge from there, because then they'll make the right choices in terms of, okay, what's going to help us to provide more customer value, what's going to provide flow in our process, in our basic process.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Niels. I think we're going to do that. We're going to wrap up now today. Thank you for those great questions, guys. Thanks for the great answers for Niels and Alex there. As we wrap up, I just want to cover again that this is the first webinar of our series. Make sure to tune in next time. This Friday, the 14th, at the same time, 11 o'clock Eastern time, we'll be covering service management in a DevOps environment. Feel free to invite your friends as well. We have some great content coming up. And to follow up with this webinar, everyone will be sent a recording and a link to register for the subsequent webinars here. So those will be coming in the next 48 hours or so. And last off, here are the methods to contact us. We're available on just about every single social media channel. And if you'd like to request Alex or Niels to talk about these DevOps subjects privately, this is their passion. I know they love to chit-chat with you about it. Feel free to reach out to us and request for them specifically. I want to thank everyone again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one, guys.